Hello, and welcome to this episode of The Inner Estate with your host, Bridget Stuart. Our guest today is David Grau Sr. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
Well, I'm really thrilled to have you here. You are an author and a consultant, and I believe you've put out 6 books already, one of which, I believe your most recent is The Stewardship Advantage, which I'd love to learn more about that. I'm familiar with your work, especially Build with the End in Mind, so it's a thrill to have you here with us today. Can you share with everyone a little bit about your passions and what has led you to where you are today, author of 6 books and a consultant working with businesses?
Well, so, and just to clarify, and by the time this podcast comes out, it might not be a true statement anymore, but I've had 5 books published and I'm working on number 6. And so,
Gotcha. Okay. There you
number
go.
6 will be out in about 90 days. But my love in life is the small business owner. And I've been doing this for about 30 years now. I don't know where the time went, but it passes. And so my idea of a small business owner is anywhere from 1 to 100 total owners and employees. 90% of the people I work with have 5 people to 25 people. So to me, that's a small business. Most of the folks I work with are not thinking IPO. They want to make a difference in their world, in their life, to their family. And, if getting rich is in the cards, super. But if it isn't, doing something you love, having control over tomorrow, that's good enough. But the fun part of what I do is that I tend to start out with very exuberant, very passionate people, and they can't wait for tomorrow to come. But most of them have been trained or taught in the fashion of a sole proprietorship. There might be an S corp or an LLC, but their cash flows, their hiring methods, everything is centered around a real basic, simple sole proprietorship model. And so my first thing I do, the way I like to say it is I help them get off the founder's treadmill and
nice.
Start to build a business. That's actually the title of my 6th book, The Founder's Treadmill. I help them build something that works for them instead of the other way around. And that's where all the engagements start.
I'm excited about that. As soon as you said founder's treadmill, I was like, oh, I am on that treadmill.
Yeah, I think we've all been on that treadmill.
And you're right. When you said that, I'll tell you what I heard. I heard that some of your clients, some of your consulting clients, they have a larger business than the way they carry themselves every day. And they have a larger business than how they leverage and create opportunity for those around them. And they are carrying more of the weight day to day within themselves rather than empowering and enhancing their success by creating success through others. Is that part of my hearing that correctly?
Perfectly said. I call it a founder-dependent business. And it's not by accident, right? When you have a passion to start a business and go out and do it, a lot of times it is just you. And you step on that treadmill, and for the first time, it's your treadmill. And you get to run at your chosen speed, your chosen incline. That's wonderful. Everybody wants to do it. And so there's a natural gravity towards that direction, except, you come out of the gate and 2 or 3 years later, all that passion and exuberance and hard work starts to take off. And now the treadmill starts to have its own speed, demands of the system. And that incline gets steeper and steeper. And what you do initially on purpose, but later on by accident, is you make everything run through you. And of course you go, well, of course I would. I'm the owner. I'm the one with the most experience and the skills. And it all rests on me because in the end, if it fails, it's on me.
That's right.
The problem with that is at some point it goes too fast and it gets too steep. And if you can't get onto a better system, it doesn't kill you, it's too dramatic. But there's a reason why the Bureau of Labor Statistics say, half of all small businesses are gone by year 5, almost 70% by year 10. And it's not because these people aren't smart, aren't hardworking, aren't passionate. Oh no, they're all that. They just keep thinking like a sole proprietorship way too long. So my work is I help them get off that treadmill, and then all things become possible. But
One of the
I don't do that as a
things
coach. I do that as a technician.
as a technician, yes, you were saying more a consultant and a technician. Now, the intriguing part to me about everything you were sharing is there's the impact on the founder, right? Which you very eloquently described. And I'm sure anyone listening to us can probably relate to either right now or at some point in their history if they're drawn to this podcast. The other thing that can manifest is that the people, the talent that you sought out, captured, hired, brought into your world, if you're hanging on too much to the work and it all has to be through you, then it jeopardizes that talent that you went to the trouble of finding.
Yeah.
And it diminishes their enjoyment of being a part of the big world that you're creating.
Yes.
And so that's when I'll give you this example, David Sr., and I'm curious if you've had this happen. Successful business owner, the founder, they're on the treadmill. Everything their eyes have to be on it because it's their name and their reputation and me. They find this great talent. Talent's unhappy. They don't know. And oh my gosh, I was sideswiped. They all left me in the middle of the night. And when they left, they took half my team. Ooh, boo-hoo. And they aren't seeing how they were part of that because they were not fully allowing the talent they found to bloom. Am I onto something there? Is that another manifestation of the founder treadmill?
I think that's absolutely a part of the founder's treadmill. And I'll just build on that for a second. But what happens is, if fast forward, you set up a proper entity structure. You build a business that's focused on being profitable and valuable and investable, and you act and fulfill the role of CEO. You don't do all the work, but you orchestrate it. Now, who do you hire to help you? Well, in that role, you would probably go out and say, okay, I need someone to help me in the CFO function, if not the formal title. I need someone who can be my operating officer. I need a chief marketing officer. I need a chief sales officer. But if you turn that around, and get back on that treadmill, and it's the founder-dependent model, well, now who do you hire? Well, if you're already doing all those things, or you think you're doing them, what you're going to do is probably try to hire another one of you, which is the wrong person to hire. It just doubles down on your strengths and your weaknesses, and you didn't really add anything. You added help, but you didn't add capacity. And so when I come in as a technician, I like, okay, slow down. Let's look at this from a different angle. Let's just turn the treadmill off for a little bit, step off, and look at it from a different perspective. And sometimes it's just, mind-blowing, or maybe liberating is a better word.
Right.
When you can get people to find, at first, the typical, treadmill runner kind of fights it and goes, no, there's this reason and there's this reason. And I've been so successful for the last 3 or 4 years. And it's like, well, I've been on that treadmill, and you'll be successful probably for another 2 or 3 years, but you will hit a ceiling. And then you're going to have to go back and rebuild the whole thing. And so best to start that sooner than later.
Now, is this something that only impacts business owners? Is this something, let's say that I am in corporate America and I've reached somewhere where I'm in the C-suite. Is this something that would also impact someone in a leadership role or a management role with another company? Or is this really just for people that are founders of a company? Like, explain that difference to me.
Well, so the first thing I do is help a new owner, the decision maker through whom everything runs, to start to imagine a different system and process for the business. And so we get off the treadmill. Let's build the business so that it can still be around past that 10-year barrier. And now, once you start to build that business, you get the right entity structure in place. You get your cash flows figured out. You understand that wages and profits, those are different. They're all income. They're taxed different. They do different things. They reward different functions. Once we get through the foundational building process, then we can start to build with the end in mind. And this is where, to answer your question, this is where next-gen talent comes into play. So why would your son or your daughter or a key employee want to commit their career to what you're building? Well, if you're running a treadmill, they don't. They might get on their own treadmill, but they're not going to get on yours. But if you build a business that literally your mission is to sell that business internally through a succession plan to a group of next-gen talent 15, 20 years from now when it's worth 5 times as much. And you'll help finance it. You'll help guide it. Now, when you sit down to interview that new incoming, dreamer, that, 23-year-old fresh out of business school, now you got something to talk about. And
Right.
they've got something to think about. Now, I couldn't think that far ahead at age 23. But, after people go through a couple of jobs, you start to think, okay, it'd be a lot easier to build on something than to start from scratch. That treadmill looks kind of rough. And so that's what build with the end in mind is for. It says single owner in most cases. What happens when it's all over? How does your story end? And it is your story to write. And so if your goal is to build something that can outlive you, build something that can take care of your current clients' children and grandchildren, well, that doesn't happen by accident. You got to start building that 10 or 15 years ahead of time. If you do, that's a special kind of reward.
I think that's pretty remarkable. So when you look at creating, because what you're really talking about is the overall culture of a company. And are you building a culture of a company where that 23-year-old dreamer talent comes in and they're able to see there would be a place for them in your world 20 years from now, if they wanted it?
It is remarkable. It is incredible. But not a lot of businesses think that way. Most of them are busy trying to survive. So
correct.
I don't coach them, but I give them the technical foundations and the security structure, the tax structure. I make it fun and enjoyable, I think. And you can decide for yourself, when you read my book. But I try to make it very non-internal revenue code. It's presented in such a way that I believe it's very empowering. My first book was literally written, I say, for people my age, 50, 60 years old, who are starting to see, I get a sharper, clear look on what and how their story might end and what they'd like to do with it. But then I took and I turned that around and I wrote a different book for the 30-something-year-olds.
Perfect.
It's a totally different perspective. And of course, way back when I was 30-something years old, I bought into a company like this. And I remember enough of how that looked and what I was worried about and, what my spouse was frightened about. So I wrote a book for the 30-year-olds, and I'll throw a few 20-year-olds and 40-year-olds in there as well. But it's for these folks who go to work every day, usually in some type of a professional services environment. Doctors, dentists, lawyers, architects, financial advisors, independent insurance folks, real estate agents, anybody who has a business that could be systematized and operationalized to be more than just one person on a treadmill. And that's most of them.
That is most of them. I agree with you. Yeah, it really is. So it's interesting. You mentioned that your different books, you had a different reader, so to speak, in mind as you were writing it. It makes me think about ages and stages of anyone who might be listening to you and I having a conversation. Let's say someone out there is in their 50s. They do own their business. They are on the founder's treadmill. Like, is it too late? So let's say that it's a mess. Let's say their structure is not appropriate for the company. They never have their wits about them to even do the research to meet with the attorney to figure out what it should be. Their taxes are messed up. Their sales are doing well, but the staff isn't. Like, if someone is listening to you and I, and they're like, well, that sounds great for someone where it's already pretty together and they can make it better. What if someone's listening to this and they're in a mess? Where would they start with your offerings of books if they want to create change now?
Well, just to be, real blunt, there is no perfect owner and there's no perfect small business. There's always an issue.
Something.
But I don't think it's ever too late to learn something more and to think about how your story might end. How would you like it to end? Most small businesses, they didn't get into business to be rich. They wanted to make a decent living and have control over what happens in their lives. And so how your story might end, it's about control over that aspect. One possibility is you simply say, okay, I'm 62 years old. I read it. I'm not going to do a thing. I'm just going to keep doing what I love. I like having a place to go. I enjoy the corner office. The business makes my car payment. I'm going to do that for as long as I can do it.
Right.
And that's okay. If that's your plan, and that's your choice. That's what you got into business to decide. Good for you.
Right.
Another possibility is you say, well, with a couple of tweaks here and technical fixes, I could make my business about 5 or 6% more profitable. I could turn the growth rates up a little bit. And then I think in about 5 or 6 years, I could sell it and maybe get that big check that we all dream about, or, maybe it's not quite so big, but you're still relieved of all the duties and details and worries, and you cash out of the business. And that's a good choice for some. But in my experience, when asked, 9 out of 10 small business owners who are passionate about what they do and who love to go into work, they don't see a hard stop. And so the only way to keep going, but at the same time to throttle back, is to bring next generation talent in. Act as the CEO. Mentor this talent. And, I don't do necessarily a lot of family businesses. I do a lot of family-like businesses with a son or a daughter and 1 or 2 or 3 non-family members, and they all get along like family. But you take that business and you set it up so that these folks can buy in.
Right.
Don't give it away. That's not a good investment. But you literally help them buy in 10, 15, 20% at a time. Today, a lot of these can be bank financed. So, as an owner, you go from 100% owner of an S Corp to 70%. And you sell your key employee, your son, your daughter, 3 people, 10% each.
Right.
And if that's a business is worth $1.5 million, you take about a third of that off the table, long-term capital gains. And you know what you do next, Bridget? You come back to work. And you might take Friday off. You might come in a little late on Monday, but you've got 4 people now that are running that business. And it's funny what happens, to a 30-something-year-old who writes a check every month to pay for their equity. They act different. They think different.
That's right.
It's important. And of course, they go to work with the person who's funding, kind of financing it, seller financing in many cases.
Yes.
But they also go to work with their mentor and their partner. And one day, they're going to help that person completely retire. That group buys out the other 70% as it goes up in value from the cash flow of the business. I teach them how to use the machinery of the business to pay for it. And you tell your current clients, children and grandchildren, don't worry. When you need help 10, 15 years from now, we'll be there for you. And we're going to do it a whole lot like the guy that you worked with. Culture, continuity. Literally, what could be more fun than that?
So it's funny, in my chosen industry of real estate, which I've been in real estate since 1998, there's so much resistance to that.
Yes.
And why in your experience, particularly in your consulting you've given so many talks and events and things like that, why do you think so many founders resist it? They fight it.
And you're absolutely right, Bridget. They do fight it. I think part of it is, there's certainly a bit of a sales culture there. And you have to build relationships, and then you have to do a fair amount of selling to make a living at it. And after a while, you go, no, it's not about the business. It's about me. And so when I first started in this business, coincidentally, it was 1998 as well, I came out of a securities firm, and I began to help independent financial advisors. And so, I think of the folks, that manage money at Schwab, Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, but also on the independent side of the world, LPL Financial, Ameriprise, Raymond James, Wells Fargo has an independent sector, Northwestern Mutual, 7,000 independent, professional managers and life insurance agents. And for the first 10 years of my business, I literally had to talk people off the ledge. And it would be like, I would say, no, you actually have a lot more value than you think. I can show you how to pay the overhead, pay yourself a reasonable salary, and we'll still bring 20% of your gross to the bottom line, EBITDA. And those earnings, those profit dollars, give your business a value if we can get you off the treadmill. And I'd explain how I do this. And they'd fight back and they'd say, no, I don't really have any value. It's just me. My client list, it's a bag of air. They were literally trying to teach and convince me that they had nothing of value. And it's like, why do you want to succeed at that?
Right.
And so that led me actually into writing my first book about ages 15, 16, 17 years ago. And I just tackled that head on. And I said, if you want to build a valueless enterprise, have at it. You can certainly do that if you try hard enough. But businesses aren't really meant to run that way.
No.
They should grow top line. They should be efficient enough to bring money to the bottom line after everybody, the owner, has been paid a reasonable level of wages. And if you're going to bring the money to the bottom line, why not go the next step and put in the formalities of a business? Formalities aren't scary. It's a business. And I'll teach you how to do it. And so I wrote my first book. That book ended up selling about 25,000 copies, which for a small business owner, that's gold.
Yeah,
and
I think that's
people
great.
would read the book, and some of the best advice I ever got on writing a book was put everything good you got in the first third. Don't save it for the end. These are for small business owners. They don't have time. Get it the first third. Get them to read the first 15, 20, 30 pages, and then talk to you. And then if they take it that far, then they start to want to convince themselves that I'm right. And then they work with me instead against
That's
me.
right. It's step against you. Yes.
It took me 30 years to learn how to say that and enunciate it. So thanks for the question, Bridget.
Well, good. Is there anything that stands out to you from any of the consulting work that you've done where you were able to really see a huge difference you made for someone?
Yeah, thank you. 100 thoughts are flying through my head at the same time. One of the most fun things I get to do is, and I'll use my terminology and explain it here briefly. The founding owner, generation one, in terms of a particular business's ownership structure, I call it G1.
Okay.
The next generation, a son, a daughter, a key employee, 15, 20 years younger, I call G2 for generation two. And so I was working, just yesterday with a group, and they're working on generation four. I mean,
nice.
How cool is that? But the best thing I get to do, it's not working with the founding generation who wants to retire. I have to go through them to get it all set up. But it's so much fun to get 2 or 3. Yesterday, I had 4 G2s on the same call. And then next week, they're going to each bring their spouses in, and we're going to do that call one more time, because they're about, what they learned on this call was, as 30-something-year-olds, if they buy in, this is a career-length, lifetime decision. They'll get to decide how their stories end. And they'll be in a business that will have doubled in size probably 2 or 3 times. This could be the largest, most valuable asset they own. But they have to go into debt for about 15 to 20 years to get it. And all of them kind of looked at each other and said, I think I'd do it. I wonder if my wife would. I wonder if my husband would.
Right.
And so I get to work with that generation and see that exuberance and kind of channel it and get it to go in a direction where it's, technically this will work. And so that's why I say I'm not a coach. I don't try to necessarily push people or convince people. I lay out the map. I lay out the foundations. I line it all up. And then how could it fail? We've got 2 generations of ownership, 4 people in there working passionate, like you are owners, and you're putting it all on the line. It's going to work. We're going to grow it. It'll do even better. It almost can't help but do better. Give it the chance, and just to watch them light up and just glow from the opportunity. To be so thankful that they have a boss or a mentor who's willing to be a partner with them. And maybe even finance that opportunity. I mean, it's, after a while, once we get that ball rolling, we don't have to push very hard.
I imagine. Yeah. And
that's
it's really
fun for me. I like working with that group.
I think that's very exciting. So on a personal note, you mentioned that back in 98, you left one of your previous careers. Or
law
jobs,
practice.
right? Law practice. Okay. And then went into this specialty, which is now going on 30 years, and started writing books around 15 years ago, 16 years ago. What is next for you in terms, I know you're still writing, you have another book coming. Is there anything else that is in development with what you're doing other than continuing to consult and grow those relationships and continue writing?
Well, I do love writing. About 3 years ago, I sold off the rest of my business. We grew from, there were 2 of us at the start, and the other person is still there. But we built it up to 65 employees and owners. I gradually sold out on my own succession plan. And then my wife had me keep my promise and buy her a horse farm. And so we moved back to horse country here in the Midwest. She got her horse farm. And I got a nice office out front where I get to sit and write. I'm an English major at heart. I love writing. And for the first time, honestly, in about 30 years, I have time to sit and write what's in my heart and my head. And so that's job one for me. Technically, I'm retired. I still work about 10-hour days. So people say, well, you're not very good at retirement. I don't think anybody is if you have an energy and a passion.
Right.
This is retirement. And then when you write books for a living, it's a rather solitary pursuit. You spend a lot of time alone with your keyboard and your own thoughts. So what I do for fun is I take on consulting engagements. Now, I'm a force of one. I don't have any staff, and I don't want to do that again. I've been there, done that. But I take on these consulting engagements on a flat fee basis, that at a low kind of minimum level or a higher, I'll help you do everything level. And it's fun. I get to work with professional service providers all over the country and in Canada, accountants, architects, engineers, electrical contractors, had a Hollywood studio, they had an off-Broadway production facility. I can't even think of half of them, but all these people from different walks of life. And, my friends say, well, how do you keep all the different business structures straight? They're all the same.
They're all the same. Okay.
The regulations and the rules are different.
Right.
S Corp or LL, stability, cash flow, tax efficiencies, ownership, transfers, long-term capital gains. That's all the same.
And showing up as a leader or showing up as a doer. Like, are you going to be on the treadmill taking all of it, or are you going to show up as a leader and you're going to grow and have it? Yeah, that's pretty universal.
But it's so helpful to me to actually get on, a call like this and talk to people out there who are, out in the trenches, working through these problems, trying to figure out ownership or how my story ends. And I learned so much by teaching.
Right.
You learn by doing. I end every week by going, now there's an idea for a new book. I should have put that in the last book. Next time I rewrite it, I'm going to put that chapter in. But, I love the touch points of what I do, helping small business owners succeed and build something that outlives them. I mean, that's honestly, if there's anything I like better than writing, that would be it. They're so appreciative and so thankful. And when you get these people with energy and enthusiasm, and they just need a clear direction, finding it and discovering it together is magical.
So I'm curious about the book Stewardship Advantage. And one of the reasons I'm curious about that is that I love the concept of stewardship and being a steward of talents, gifts, resources. I like that. That's a key word for me, is how I'll describe it. Could you share a little bit about the Stewardship Advantage and what people could expect from that book?
Thank you. So let me try to put it this way. My first 4 books were mostly about how to build a legacy, how to, move from a sole proprietorship, get off the treadmill, build a lasting, strong, durable business, and then maybe perpetuate it into the next generation. Those books are all about the how. Like I said, I'm not really a coach. I'm a technician. I'll show you how, and I'll help you do it if you want me to. The Stewardship Advantage is the why. And so it's honestly the most non-technical book I think I've ever written and maybe will ever write. I was watching the news one morning, and one of the habits I have is I walk about 5 miles a day. I don't try. I just have a lot of nervous energy, and I could walk 5 miles and never leave the house. But
I was going to say never leave your office. Yeah. You can walk.
The weather's nice. I'll head out down the road, and that's where I do my thinking. While I take my phone, I'm not on it. I don't have any AirPods or anything, and it's just me and my thoughts. And I was watching the news, I don't know, about a year and a half ago. I was kind of depressed, actually, and I walked out and I thought, what a mess. And I thought, well, it's probably like that for, our parents too, World War II and Vietnam War and the Korean War and, all the political assassinations in the 1960s. And you go,
yeah,
okay, it's just a different kind of mess. But what if we could make a little difference, every one of us, every day? And I just personally, believe in you create people with a smile and you do something kind and you say something nice. You never know what that person went through before you saw them. And so I wrote a book about why. If you're a small business owner, and there are 500 million small business owners in the world, why not take what you do and all the lives you touch, what I call, they are called stakeholders,
Hmm.
your clients, your customers, your suppliers, your employees, your partners, the environment, the community around you. Why not make a formal plan? It's called a stewardship plan. I never saw one before I wrote one, but I'm pretty sure I didn't invent it. We take your business, we create a stewardship plan, and one stakeholder at a time, we decide how we're going to do better for that particular group. You don't have to knock it out of the park. You just focus on it just for, a couple of hours. What could we do better for the clients that trust us for services? How could we be a better vendor or supplier or
Right.
whatever it is you do? With the idea that if you take care of all your stakeholders, it's natural, normal in our world that they'll help take better care of you.
That's right.
If, not everybody has to do it, but if you had 5 or 6 million people, that's 1% of the small businesses out there that got up every morning and said, let's take care of what we can take care of. Let's start to change the world by making a difference in our own community, and we'll do it with our business. We're all coming into work every day anyway. And Bridget, to go back to your earlier question, as you think about your next hire, that next generation talent you're trying to bring in the door, you're effectively trying to get, that next generation to follow you as a
Yes.
business leader. And so one of the things I said in the Stewardship Advantage right up front in chapter 1, before you decide who you want to lead, figure out where you want to go. Sit down and write out your mission, vision, and values. Now, that's not hard. It could be a 25-word sentence, but
Right.
write it down. And if you don't like it, change it next week. But write it out and share it and tell people, all of your stakeholders, who you are, what you stand for, and where you're going. And you'll be surprised who wants to follow. They can't follow without a clear path. And you've got to do that. So why do you work every day? How might your story end? Who do you want to surround yourself with? Well, your mission, vision, and values will help lead you to the answer.
That's right.
Because it's my most non-technical book, but it was my shot at helping make the world a little bit better.
I think it sounds fantastic. And it is funny to me too, and I'm curious if you run into this, how many people overcomplicate or resist writing down the mission, vision, and values?
Everybody.
It's like you said, I finally said to one of my clients who was resisting it for a long time, I said, you're not chiseling this into 2 stone tablets and coming down the mountain, and they will never, be, it just starts with something, and I was like, okay, this week you have to write something, I don't care what it is. You're not carving it in stone. You're not painting the Sistine Chapel.
I'll help them write it out. But in the end, it's got to come from in here.
It does. Yes.
So in the Stewardship Advantage, I started out and I said, well, okay, pardon me for just a moment. This is about small business owners from 1 to 100 people. But just to illustrate how simple this could be, let's look at the McDonald's Corporation, the hamburger company, right? And I said, here's their mission statement. I don't remember, but it's like 15 words long. Here's their vision. It was like 8 words long. Here's the values. And it was like 15 words long. And I did Coca-Cola. And I said, these companies collectively last year, generated X billion dollars in profits.
That's right.
And multiple billions in sales. And this is how they lead. And so it's not that hard. And then I gave, probably 40 examples from, family-owned furniture stores to a car wash to a coffee shop to a bakery.
Right.
What their mission, vision, and values statements were. And usually about 25 words. And it was unique to them.
Yes.
Just looking through all the examples, you go, okay, let me go for a long walk and I'll come back and I'll have it.
Yeah, right. And you know what I found is a lot of times when people are struggling. So if you're listening to this and you're struggling with writing down a mission, vision, and values, they're focusing on how they think it should sound and how other people are going to judge it. Yeah. And I say to them, none of that matters. What matters is speak from your heart and not from your head. Allow your passion and your core values to just come out in words that sound like you. And don't worry in this moment that, people are going to judge that. It's not going to be right. And what if so just allow it to flow from your heart. Don't
Yeah.
get hung up in that part of your head thinking about what other people are going to think.
Well said. Yeah. And, initially, write it out and just put it in the drawer for a week. Come back to it.
Hmm.
You don't have to share it with the world initially. And in fact,
Right.
I'd assume for the first year or two, it will change. And
Agreed.
as you put the foundations in for a different, stronger business, and you start to think about attracting the talent from your community, uh, in these days, maybe from the other side of the world to help you get where you're going, it will change. That's good. That's fine. It's
That's
your
right. That's
statement.
growth.
And that's the
Yeah.
joy of being a leader. You get to change your mind, but give yourself that flexibility. And, I write mine out, about every 6 months, and I tweak it just a little bit because the world looks different to me. The world isn't that much different, but I've changed, and my experiences reshape me. And I go back in and I go, well, that's not so important to me anymore. Now I really want to do more of this. It's your statement. But if you don't have it written out, nobody can follow it. And if you don't know what you stand for, the world around you will tell you. And that's not always.
That's right.
One last point on the Stewardship Advantage. The book is politically and religiously agnostic. I literally did try to write it to all 500 million small business owners anywhere in the world and all sorts of different belief systems. The book is non-judgmental. If you own a small business, consider using it to do good for the world and your community.
I think
Simple
it's
as that.
great. I mean, that book has a very clear mission.
So it's kind of my overarching theme. Use your small business to do good. But going back to where I started as a technician, almost half of all small businesses on the planet die before year 5. 2/3 of them won't make it to year 10. It's very difficult to focus on making the world a better place and helping your community solve problems when you're trying to survive and eat. So
Correct.
the technical nature of the work I do is to say, okay, nonsense with that 10-year barrier. Let's soar over top of it. Let's build something that was designed to fly, and let's get that job done, right? Get that off the table. And then you will have the extra to share. That's literally part 2 of the Stewardship Advantage, finding your
Nice.
extra to share. Got to strengthen that small business.
I think that's
That's what I
fantastic.
do for a living, Bridget.
It sounds fun.
It is. I love doing what I do.
And it's clear to me that you enjoy it. So
It's
you're living every day in your mission, vision, and values that are supporting how you want to have your life by design on your
Yeah.
horse farm in Kentucky, and having this life with your wife and your family and doing what you love every day.
And then on the weekends, I get to go out and fix fencing.
There you go. So you get to another technical aspect that's also practical and hands-on. There you go.
Something I didn't know, and some of the readers will be landowners and laugh at me for saying this. So we bought 10 acres, and I had no idea how long of a fence line that was around a rectangular perimeter on 10 acres. And it turns out it's about half a mile. But then you have to put in, cross pieces on the fencing. And so at this point in time, we have about 1.5 miles of what they call 4-plank black horse fencing.
Okay.
When 1,500-pound animals with an attitude lean against it, or, my wife goes galloping out, one paddock to the other and bumps into the fence a little bit, there's always something to paint, to nail, to saw, to fix,
Right.
get the post hole digger out. And so I am in the best shape of my life. In the morning, I rest and I write.
Nice. And then you're mending and tending fences.
Yeah, this is retirement.
Pretty cool. I like it. That's really fantastic.
Yeah,
So
thank
if anyone's listening to us right now and they feel as if they don't know a first step they could take, what's a first step they could do if they're feeling overwhelmed? They have their own small business. What's just
Okay.
a first step they could do today that will give them a nudge out of the overwhelm?
Well, at the risk of being self-serving, the simplest place to start is just to learn more. And the simplest, fastest way to start there, I would say, if you would please, come visit my website, www.davidgrausr for davidgrausenior.com, and look at the books I've written. I have, I don't know, 100 blog postings. There's no cost for that. You can sign up for my newsletter, no cost for that. You can also go to my YouTube site. I've got 80 some videos, no cost for that.
Great.
But if you want something personal to you, I have a consulting tab there. You can schedule 30 minutes confidentially. No cost for that. And just write me a short memo. Just fill in the form online, and it take about 5 minutes, and say, my name's Bob. I live in Orlando and I'm struggling with this. Do you think there's any hope for me? And
Excellent.
at the same time, this system will schedule a 30-minute Zoom call. We'll get online like this and talk. And if there's no hope, I'll tell you. But there's
Good.
almost always hope.
There's almost always hope.
I'll explain it. Bob, start here. Bob,
Right.
just read chapter 5, but I can help him with that. And when you're done, if you want to actually put these pieces in place, I'm trained in law, securities regulation, taxes, business building, entity structures. I'll get you through it. I've done this a couple thousand times now, and seen businesses, that were struggling a lot more than you are. And you got a good runway, you got a lot of time, you got a good team around you. Let's take this thing and get her up in the air. And sometimes that's exactly where it starts. You just need to have somebody tell you.
That's right.
It's okay.
That's right. It's that one step. And what I'm hearing you say clearly, I'm so glad that you said that, because if you are feeling overwhelmed and it's a cycle of overwhelm, stop, get off the founder treadmill trying to do all of it yourself in your own head. Reach out. And one of the benefits of reaching out to someone like David is that he's not in your backyard. Well, at least I hope not. Go check out. But he's not right in your backyard, meaning you can set up this meeting with David, and it's completely confidential with someone who doesn't have a horse in the race and is not right there in your backyard. So you can just be open. You can literally share. You can ask anything. When you were describing it, I was feeling a sense of relief for a fictitious person who may reach out to you. But you and I both know what I'm talking about. The overwhelm. Right? They find themselves and they have no choice but to continue performing every day, because their performance when they're in this cycle is key to having either production or sales or growth or whatever it is that's the metric for their business. They have no choice but to continue performing every day to make that happen. And the overwhelm and the chaos just grows. So please reach out. You do not have to be the one person that needs to solve everything yourself. And there are people out here like David that will be able to shine a light on it. They will be able to give you a second opinion on whether there is no hope or no, I don't like to use this word, but if the value's not there for the effort that would be required, but you're going to be able to get out of the echo chamber of your head. Please reach out.
And of course, between the books, some people like to, sit up in a cozy spot, upstairs and read. If you don't like to read, but you don't want to talk to anybody quite yet, the videos, there's
the videos,
hours and hours of videos. Like the longest one is 20 minutes that have a lot of this technical detail. And I'm talking to you, but it's just a one-way discussion. And last but not least, some people would like to have a discussion. There's no cost to do it. We'll just get on the phone and we'll just talk. And, like I said, sometimes that's just with G1. Sometimes it's G1 and his or her spouse. Sometimes it's G1 and a G2 hopeful or wannabe. It doesn't matter to me.
Hey, David, sometimes it's a G1 and a G2 that doesn't want to be. I run into that in real estate. I'll tell you that. Sometimes, yeah.
And sometimes, it's mom or dad saying, I don't understand why my son or daughter doesn't want to invest.
Doesn't want to do it. That's right.
So then we take it apart and the business is growing at 2% a year on average. It doesn't have any profits. It's the treadmill. And son or daughter is smart enough to go, I don't want to live my life on a treadmill.
Correct.
So it's not a wrong decision, but we can change the question and get you a different answer if you want to.
That's right. Yes. So I'm so glad you said that. And if any of you listening right now, you are having that feeling of either chaos or overwhelm, or sometimes the feeling hides itself as just a sense of, I made these decisions, I created this structure, it was right, I thought at the time, and I don't know if it's right now. They could have a consultation with you. Correct me if I'm wrong, David, but you probably have some meetings where people think what they have is not set up structure, and you get to confirm for them, like, kudos, great job. You actually did set it up for growth and for scalability, and it's good. But just don't feel as if you have to be a silo out there alone.
As I said in the draft of my newest book, the Founder's Treadmill, jumping on that treadmill to start your business is not a mistake. I mean, most of us don't have private equity, or $1 million in seed capital to put into it and hire a staff. If we didn't jump on the treadmill, there wouldn't be a
There
small
wouldn't be
business.
company. That's
And
right.
so it's the right answer initially. The problem is, when is it the wrong answer? And that's
Correct.
real hard to see when you're standing there running for your life. And so
That's right.
having an objective opinion come in to say, it's about time we give you a different system. And
Yeah.
it's not fixing it, it's evolving it. And there are better ways when you're ready for that.
Well, David, I have appreciated this conversation so much. I really, truly hope that you will come and join me again after the Founder's Treadmill is released, because I just think this is, as you said, 500 million small business owners, right?
Yeah.
And the 10-year ceiling, whatever we want to call that. So I'd love to have you back as a guest again to discuss that. And I want to thank you for everything that
Absolutely.
you shared today. It's clear that your passion for what you do is really flowing out of you, and your clients, I'm sure, benefit from that, as well as your readers and your video watchers on YouTube. If you're a guest here at the Inner Estate, I hope you'll join me again on the next episode. David, thank you again.
Bridget, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.